So, hi everyone. Before we start, we're just going to kick off things with a bit of brief shilling. Hold on, let me just, because I have to say, first of all, love this T-shirt from QWERTY. Not sponsored by them, but an amazing website. I wish I was. um, yeah, please do remember to like and share this video. It's very important. It helps the channel grow, helps get more views on here, and as well, it gets more conversations going, and that's why I like conversations, because the more people we get on our good morning walks, the better it is. Obviously, if you'd like to support the channel in a different way, there are links down below to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link. And thank you very much to the people that do support me that way. Your support is absolutely incredible. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, obviously, with the US elections still at this time of doing this, and it is 12 o'clock on a Wednesday, just about to hit 12 o'clock on a Wednesday. At this time of doing this, it is very, very likely that Joe Biden is going to win, and that Donald Trump is going to engage in some sort of legal shenaniganry to essentially try and get loads and loads of mail-in ballots thrown out, which is absolutely the most undemocratic thing you could possibly do. However, obviously, coming from the UK, we have a really different thing going on, and that is the Electoral Commission. And we're going to go through an article at the moment that essentially is something that we really need to be keeping a closer eye on what is going on. It is that our government is currently trying to undermine the Electoral Commission, and that could have huge complications for our elections going forward. So, back in July, the Independent Committee on Standards in Public Life, an advisory body to the Prime Minister on ethics, launched an inquiry on how our elections are regulated. And we can now see the submissions made by academics, civil society campaigners, and transparency groups. And they reveal something interesting. There is very little support for the government's attempt to undermine the Electoral Commission, Britain's independent watchdog for election rules. Number 10 has been gearing up for this fight for some time. After all, parties tend to be unhappy when they get investigated, but voters themselves are deeply worried about the state of our election rules, suggesting that we need stronger enforcement, not dismantling any democratic safeguards. And there is growing public concern over inadequate control, regulation of political activity on social media, and that is up 8 percentage points year on year. Concerns over inadequate regulation / control of the money in political parties spend on their election campaigns is also at a 29% high, up 8 points in 2019. We also saw the rise in concern of foreign influence in the UK election results. This is considerably higher than concerns over electoral fraud. So, far from wanting to undermine the Electoral Commission, the inquiry found broad support for enhancing its powers to protect our election integrity. Many respondents were in consensus with the Electoral Reform Society recommendations, which included developing a transparent online political ad database, enhancing the Commission's powers to obtain and share information when investigating wrongdoing, and boosting fines for campaigns who willfully break the law. At the moment, the fines are just seen as the cost of doing business. So they're not even a deterrent to not to do something. So obviously, this is a problem, and that we need to do something like this. Obviously, we saw this with the not only the Brexit referendum, where they clearly went and broke the rules on that. But also in the Conservative couple of elections, they have overspent on this, and they have been investigated for this stuff. So, at the consultations unit's Deputy Director Alan Roderick noted, the basic underpinning and the value of the regulatory system should be that it should help to empower citizens to proactively and actively, equally and effectively in a democratic system, whether as candidates, campaigners, participants in democratic discussions, or voters. It should also enable voters to make an informed choice at the ballot box. Justin Fisher of Brunel University and the Associated Electoral Administrators noted that good levels of satisfaction among electoral agents with the Electoral Commission's advice and guidance, as well as high satisfaction with the Electoral Administration. Both Redwick and Fisher, as well as the Liberal Democrats, added that the Electoral Commission's role could be expanded to restore its original educational function, improve public understanding of democracy and elections. And this is something that I've said that we need to do. And because bear in mind, where do you actually learn about elections? If you genuinely think you've probably never had a class, there is very little actual physical information floating about, information about how to vote and the process of voting in the UK. It almost doesn't exist. So I think doing this would be a really important step to educating, of getting people to understand how to vote, where to vote, and obviously when votes are going to happen and take place. So that is really important regardless of whatever side you're on. This is something that we need to do. So the role was abolished some years ago, perhaps to the detriment of well-informed debate. The Association of Electoral Administrators found the Electoral Commission was an excellent provider of guidance, supporting resources, and good practice, providing a consistency of approach across the UK. There are clear things which need to change, but these are the directions of more oversight, not less. Many respondents referenced the House of Lords Democracy and Digital Technologies Committee recent recommendation that the Electoral Commission's maximum fines for wrongdoing should be increased to £500,000 or 4% of spending, whichever is greater. Politics is now in near permanent campaigning mode. Not currently only in a material produced in design, the campaigning around the period is monitored. Fact-checking. A fact-checking group, Full Fact, argued that the Electoral Commission remit should therefore cover a wider period beyond the current time limit. And I'd agree to that as well. The inquiry rightly saw calls for clearing up Britain's broken party funding rules in their separate submissions. The Transparency International and the Anti-UK Corruption Coalition called for change to limit the influence of big money in politics. Again, something I definitely agree with, and definitely something that needs doing. Introducing a £10,000 cap on donations, which again I agree with, and reducing parties' spending limit in general elections by 15% and prohibiting parliamentarians from accepting paid foreign travel over £500 other than from prescribed organisations, reducing the threshold for donation or loans reporting to just £500, and opening up donation reporting from secretive and unsolicited associations. I completely agree with that. The Conservative government insists that the Electoral Commission is accountable to no one. In fact, it is accountable to legislators in all three parliaments. It has huge expertise and a focus on compliance rather than simply sanctioning after wrongdoing. Sam Power, who co-wrote the Electoral Reform Society, the recent Democracy in the Dark report, said, in fact, go read that because it's a very good report, the simple fact that there is an Electoral Commission itself within 20 years of institutional knowledge of what works in terms of electoral regulation is a significant strength and is not the case in many countries across the world. However, as academic Alistair Clark noted, parties may therefore seek to limit the Commission's powers precisely because its remit is to regulate them. That is why all of us must stand up for the independent watchdog. The government's recent criticism of the Electoral Commission is a doubly alarming, given that the Conservatives now hold a controlling majority on the Speaker's Committee, which regulates it. There is a strong argument that cross-party balance should be restored, with no one party controlling a majority sway over our regulator. The overall picture is clear. there is strong support for our independent electoral watchdog and a near consensus on a need to update our analog age election rules. There is also plenty of agreement on how to do so. It is up for ministers to come forward with sensible proposals to strengthen our democracy, not weaken it. And I 100% agree with pretty much everything there that was said. I've said this before, we need to drastically take hold of not only just electoral reform, but change our electoral reform as well. And this is something that we can definitely take part in. So I can definitely recommend going read the report Democracy in the Dark. It is quite a long read, but it's definitely worth it. There are a Cliff Notes version out there as well, just to get like the nitty gritty into it. But anyway, as always, thank you for watching. Please do, if you would like to support the channel, please do look down below to the Patreon and the one-off donation link, and thank you to the people that do support me that way. It is fantastic that you do support me, and as always, we'll see you next time.